Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Almost through the week already. Flew by for me. I don't know about you. I'm heading to, planning to head to LA next week for Bitcoin Alpha, but I wonder if I'll be able to. We got drones in drones in Europe and FAA unpaid workers in the US. Pretty wild. I remember when was this? 12, 13 years ago even, maybe more, when that volcano in Iceland kept erupting and they canceled flights, transatlantic flights. I thought that was kind of entertaining. I actually was flying over during that time. I made it, even though there was a lot of cancellations for days. And we kind of think we're so advanced with everything, but sometimes little things can throw a wrench in the system. Anyway, that's all about me for now. As I'm talking about in the title here, I want to look a little bit at TradFi, possible influence of Bitcoin. As you know, I don't so much dwell on the stories or the hype or the media, but I try to show you guys some facts. So I've updated this one. I'll keep updating it. I still have to get derivatives in here. That is like SIBO, CME, those SIBO part of CME now, I guess, but those derivative contracts on Bitcoin, which started already in December 2017. So TradFi has been around in Bitcoin for a while, but people are wondering how much this, this cycle might be influenced. So here's, I have a few different categories here. All right, we'll go through them. But the first one I want to show you is strategy, MicroStrategy. Still on the documents of a lot of the APIs, it says MicroStrategy Incorporated, but I know they're doing business as strategy. This is a linear chart in millions. And this is volume, but it's volume expressed in dollars. Okay, so it's value of shares traded, which is just the price times the vol. We'll look at all the sectors here involving Bitcoin. Notice, interestingly, with strategy, you start to actually see it in 2020 when Saylor made his announcement. It's kind of interesting. Strategy's here all the way at the beginning. You can look in much smaller. So it's pretty amazing what he did for his company by buying Bitcoin. You can just see alone. He went from 2,500 million days of volume traded to hundreds of millions to billions. Pretty impressive. And with all the hype of the Trump admin election, I should have Bitcoin price on here, but I don't for now. There's a bump in price here. Would have been great if you were long strategy options. They topped out at $39 billion day. Pretty wild. Notice how TradFi sleeps. All right, I'm showing you business days, trading days. It's always something that I think is interesting. But good for Saylor, good for strategy. Now let's look at the strategy preferreds. I have them isolated as well, separate category. Strike, Strife, Stride. Can you see them? Light red. As far as volume, they don't do too much on the price. Right? These are usually, of course, they're all USD assets, but these are, Saylor did a pretty good job of moving out of convertible debt and moving into perpetual instruments, perpetual stock, preferred stock. So more volume than he was getting out of strategy in the 2000s, 2010s, but not nearly as much as strategy stock itself. If I put it back on it, strategy stock obviously dwarfs it. These are stacked. Right? These are stacked. So take off. Not too much happening, but certainly all this money that trade. Now this is volume, right? So and it obviously doesn't. We don't have the convertible notes here. This is just stock volume. But all this money that trades, at least initially, not on the secondary market, but initially from the company, they can use to buy Bitcoin. All right. So we have strategy preferreds. There's like 4 instruments there. It's not much, but this is affecting Bitcoin. Let's actually zoom in. Let's not do, a lot of this stuff started to happen from 2017, right? So let's just zoom in here. I know my zoom button's annoying, but all right, now let's look at Tesla volume. Tesla is a Bitcoin treasury company, 10,000 Bitcoins or so. But as you know, it's not solely a Bitcoin treasury company and has a lot of hype, has a lot of cash flow surrounding it. Let's put Tesla on. During the meme stock days, Tesla peaked out at a $308 billion day. They announced that they were buying Bitcoin, by the way, right around actually it was 2021. February 2021. Right about here. This actually pulled Bitcoin's market cap over the value of silver at the time, available silver. This is volume. This is not market cap or anything. This is value of shares traded. Okay. So Tesla's pretty big, and it really sort of dwarfs what strategy is doing. And it's not a pure Bitcoin treasury company. So I wanted to isolate it just to show you, but I'm going to keep it off for the rest of the time just to show you. I'll put it back on just for comparison at some points, but also interesting. Notice how it sort of explodes during the meme stock trading periods, which really started in 2021. But so there you go. That's Tesla. That's Tesla. All right, now let's look at miners compared to strategy. It's publicly traded Bitcoin miners. Much bigger than strategy when strategy was getting started. Now, strategy competes as far as volume. A little bit smaller at the moment. So again, pick your poison. Sometimes half and half. Strategy a little bit more, actually. A few billion each. Less than 10 billion, but still, decent clip. All right, these are miners. Big boom in miner, which wasn't many here. I'm not even sure who this would be, but 2017 miners got to $1 billion as far as trading vol. All right, let's look at ETFs. This is spot and futures ETFs. Grayscale included. No, Grayscale not included. I'm sorry. Grayscale not included. It was a private instrument, of course, at the beginning. Strategy is still by the 2024 leading, but kind of equal shares, right? Red is strategy, sort of silverish color is miners. ETFs are gold. All right, now let's look at balance sheet companies. I know Tesla is a balance sheet company. I know Strategy is a balance sheet company, but I'm isolating them for you. Let's look at the rest. Again, last cycle, big bubble dump. These, I actually don't have my talking points offhand here, but these booms also occur because of meme stock trading here. And then here you see, of course, the election, there was a lot of trading. And then moving up. And even here, this is when ETFs were approved, right? Start of 2024. But if we sort of isolate the balance sheet companies, maybe a little bit more share of all of them compared to miners ETFs, similar to strategy. Good morning, Gio Morgan. All right, so again, I want to reiterate, I do not have Wall Street derivative volume here, futures. Doesn't include deribit options, which were the main option trader over the years. Now there's, Coinbase bought them and other stuff. By the way, Coinbase is included in here, the balance sheet company. But if you take it all together, let's see the top here, 70 billion. Big one for MicroStrategy around the election, but mostly 20 to 30 billion as of the last 5 years. And during deep bears, not much at all. So a good sign, by the way, volume, as ever, is a good sign of when, there's not a lot of interest. You can see it quite clearly during the, bull here, top here in price, top here in price. And when there's just not a lot of interest, it's pretty low. But it is getting higher, and it's slowly climbing higher for sure. All right, now let's look at exchange volume. All exchanges, spot, BTC. There we go. Without, with. So my conclusion, I can already tell you, just looking at this, is Wall Street is definitely affecting price, but it's still a pretty big, still a minority. All right, we went on the left axis here from a top of 70 billion, of mostly 20 to 30 billion. All right, to a top of 400 billion. All right, but Bitcoin 60, 70, 80, 100 billion dollars. And all the other TradFi products. A tenth of that, 20% of that. Strategy on a good day would be right there. Right there? off. Yeah, here was the best. So this was the most extreme day for strategy. 40 billion. Bitcoin itself did 106 billion on exchanges. Also notice, Bitcoin doesn't sleep. Exchanges provide a pretty good service, right? They work 24/7. I had a question over the weekend, got it answered by an exchange, by a real person. You got to submit a ticket or whatever, but it happens. And notice if we take this off, you have these gaps, right? So we have TradFi. TradFi still sleeps, which I think is interesting. I think that's important to talk about. I think the plebes still dominate the narrative. Of course, it doesn't mean this is all retail, but Bitcoin is a retail first asset, right? I guess my data starts here. I think I had more Bitcoin data somewhere. Yeah, I only have my exchange of values starting here. But anyway, you see it dominates, just dominates. All right, let's put Tesla back in. Tesla's a hugely traded stock. And this, I'm going to take off all the others, just BTC exchanges and Tesla. Bitcoin, just think about this. But Tesla's a top 10 company, majorly traded stock. In fact, overly traded, I would say. And Bitcoin is right there with it. Go back to this chart or table, right? You can find this on my website. Top 10 stocks in Bitcoin. Tesla's down here at number 10, right? Top 10 stocks in Bitcoin. We have TSMC at 1.2 trillion, Tesla at $1.5 trillion. And notice how Tesla, Bitcoin, and NVIDIA is actually not trading so strong, but they're always like multiples of a percent, very actively traded, which is wild. I mean, you think about like all the other main stocks, Apple, Google, Amazon, they traded a fraction of what Bitcoin exchange volume. So this 59 billion, that's exchange volume. That's the orange here. Massive. Good morning, Sirodon. Happy to do that. Let's do it for sure. Yeah, it really is amazing. I guess I got to look at the value of gold stocks compared to Bitcoin, but Bitcoin trading volume dwarfs those too. It's a good sign. It's a very good sign. Positive sign. Really muted retail interest during this bull, but it's not like this has fallen off a cliff. And of course, I know this isn't all retail, but the fact that exchange volume is still so high is just a great sign and clearly growing. If you just compare like ETFs, you can barely see it, what ETFs do. So my conclusion to that question is that it's still very much spot dominated market, very much retail dominated market, even though we clearly have Wall Street coming on. If you just look at that, Bitcoin is 90% of the trading vol. So, I'm not a Wall Street guru, but when 90% of the trading vol and with an asset that doesn't sleep on its metrics, right? We got every day here for Bitcoin, not every day for these other assets. Then I think we don't need to worry too much yet about market manipulation or regulatory capture. Great signs for bottoms, though, probably. I need to layer on price. Let's look at price really quick. We're going to have to go back and forth between charts, but I just want to isolate this period right there. September 2023, so we're on the way up. Yeah. A little Bart Simpson action here. On the way up, but still pretty cheap, obviously, compared to today. So not as cheap as, 10 grand more than our low, but right about this time, look at how light the volume was everywhere. And then once you start to go on the way up, great sign. November. It doesn't exactly predict the bottom, but yeah, because at the time you're not going to know if it's going to go lower, right? So it doesn't exactly predict the bottom, but you can see here, October, November, it really is quite a bit higher than the bottom. Although it's true that we had elevated here in the start of 2023. This was the this was the Silicon Valley blow up right here, precisely here. It's funny. But we had some choppy months there at the start of 2023 as people were trying to understand if this was the bottom, and then it was. So anyway, point is, this is super bullish to me. It just remains super bullish, and I don't buy the narratives that... I firstly don't buy the narratives that the cycles are over, Wall Street controls Bitcoin. We're still pretty robust, frankly, due to exchanges. We can come back to this if you want. It's always a great day when we're above the power curve, right? That's only a 33 percentile event. So we're in the minority of observations where we actually are above the power curve, but the longer and stronger that we're above it, the more it pulls it back up for the future, which is fun. Also shows you that for sure, not for sure, but with very high probability, some sort of hyper-Bitcoinizing event is not going to happen. A hyper-Bitcoinizing event is just very, very low probability, especially when you think of all the other economic indicators that I try to show you guys that Bitcoin does compared to the TradFi market. Such as transaction origination values, yearly basis versus Fedwire, right? Bitcoin does, let's say, 10 trillion. Fedwire does 1.1 quadrillion. So I'll come back to this more. I think during this bull, it'll be interesting to see. Let's check the price, by the way, on this date. So February 2021, that was a little bit before the top. Let's go to, what was it, February 21? Sorry. February 26. We had a $350 billion day. This is here. Oh, it was the top. Wow. Well, that wasn't, it was almost the top. People thought it was going back down. And then this was right here. So it's 46,000 down from 57. People decided to unload and went back up to 61. Stayed there for 3 months. very good sign of frothy markets. So point is, I'll keep following it. I think it's good for us when we get really, really hot in price. I don't see anything here that shows, the beauty of having such high, priors is that we need to beat them the next time around. Or with such a growing asset, I think it's very easily that we should beat them. All right, let's look at gold. And let's look at I gotta pull these up sooner, I swear. Let's go back up to the top. Gold this is like, close to record high now. Nearly 24 trillion. I mean, it is record high on the price. Right? What are we at? High gold came yesterday, right, at 4,059. Now we're at 4,039. So all-time high gold. Peter Schiff is loving it, and nearly 24 trillion in value. Let's look at the why is this not working? Is this what I want? Oh, that's not what I want. I keep forgetting. I'll make a tweet after this. At this value of Bitcoin, we're very close to passing the dollar, remember. Physical cash money dollars. All right, so here's gold. Bitcoin priced in gold, extremely low. Remember, let's take off all these. All right, so still way below the trend. Okay, it's price in dollars, price in gold. Got a lot of different things happening. The green is priced in gold. Let's just do it here. So tomorrow I run it into changing to dollars, but now we're still at 30 ounces of gold per one Bitcoin. That's between the 30th and the 40th still. My Zoom actually, I realized, doesn't. I want to take off this change, but anyway, the bands now, they switch into dollars. I know it's kind of weird, but I think it's. So now you can see this is a dollar price based on gold. So if we stay at $4,000 gold, by the way, if we stay at $4,000 gold going to the end of the year, 125, 140 at these levels. So that's exactly the dollar-based power trend. And if we extend it, if we go back to the 9, it's crazy high levels. Does anybody think we're going to do this? $500,000 Bitcoin. We hit the 9 every prior cycle. Even though we barely hit it here, we did hit the 9. I'm looking at ounces of gold per Bitcoin. What does Pareto's law on our AI tell us? Yeah, so on a distribution it is. And you can see this, by the way, with nodes. So there's a random distribution, power law distribution. So few nodes have many connections, many usage. Few nodes like Google, Amazon have many. Many nodes have few connections. So that there's your power law distribution. Notice, by the way, when I turn this into dollars, right? So here's the dollar price of the B, the B here. And then obviously when we go into the projection, I'm just keeping it right at today's gold price. So $4,000 gold. So we, you know, even if we continue at these low levels of gold, still projects 125K by year end. Again, I kind of expect it to pump above that. If not by year end, then maybe by the winter, by the spring. But if we sort of magically jump back to the levels that we've seen Bitcoin in terms of gold, all right, we've always hit the 9. Always. Of course, it's true. We really were muted in this last boom, and possible that we don't hit it this time. So if we hit the 8, let's even take off the 9. Let's look at the 8 is more probable. You're going to get a more optimistic view of Bitcoin's price if it gets back to this gold multiple, right? So it's going to be 363K. Whereas if you look at it in the dollar-based chart by the year end, the 8 is only 170K only. I think, though, with these levels, you can really zero in on probabilistically where things will be. And again, people say Wall Street's like changing the game completely. Maybe. There's still a hell of a lot of Bitcoin volume on exchanges that anybody can purchase and withdraw. Let's look at fees. Nothing to write home about. Pretty normal. Every boom, we boom in fees. Not doing it right now. I should say every top. Every top. The exceptions to that was the ordinals affair. The exceptions were the ordinals BRC20 affair. So we're trying to figure it out. The halving as well had a big boom, huge boom in fees, actually a record 78 million in fees, which I think is the top, right? It's the top on a daily. But now we're just completely just humming along. No. It would be great to see this answer, but I mean, we have whales in Bitcoin. We just saw this whale last year, or no, this year, this summer, July 4th, I believe it was. So probably an American. Moved. Was it 80,000 Bitcoin at the end of the day? Now it's true when you have such a whale, you might not want to call him retail anymore. Just a just a whale, but this movement was born in retail. Wall Street had nothing to do with it, and I think as long as that is still, I think as we go on, Wall Street will have more to do with it. But I do not think that's the case. Like it's just not an apples to apples compared with the regular Forex markets. Like the Forex markets are huge, biggest markets in the world, trillions of dollars a day in volume. These are companies hedging. I think with Bitcoin, you still have just a lot of grassroots stuff going on. For sure, Wall Street is growing. It's growing. And it's probably not fair of me to call all this orange retail, right? There's no doubt. I mean, there are. But let's call it retail plus whales that can move the markets way more than whatever Wall Street can do. I mean, you should look at the Bitcoin Treasury's website, right? And I'm not in the business of naming names or talking about people directly, but um, plenty of people that were in 2012 or earlier have pretty easy access to more than 2,000 coins, even. Again, is that retail? Probably not. That's whale, but it is a power law, though, isn't it? The distribution, 80-20 rule. No, I get it. I get it. All good. No, no, no. I mean, it's a good question. Bitcoin is going for the Forex markets eventually. It's totally going for it. The cash Forex, obviously, we're talking about electronic Forex, right? Which is more M1 money. That itself is probably a 60, $70 trillion market. You could, I mean, you're going to include repurchase agreements and money market funds, not just M1 money. It could be some M3 money too, but it's a lot of cash. And the physical bearer cash, that's $9 trillion value, not volume, but value. Bitcoin is 2.4, so we'll get there. No doubt about it, we'll get there. This is a hell of a distribution. This will be interesting to see how this distribution changes, not in terms of coins, but in terms of like percentages, right? So obviously, strategy just incredible lead, but then you go from the 1 to the 100, and this is a great stack for any individual, but for the value proposition that Bitcoin offers, like we need to be, and I think we will be, where the 100th largest Bitcoin treasury public company is going to be in the maybe the thousands in the future if they run leverage right. Or not. Maybe Bitcoin explodes in price too much that even the top 100 companies can't get there. Good morning. Good morning. We're still pre-rich. Enjoy the ride. It's very possible that this gold chart offers this sort of a juicer, a premium over the dollar valuation, right? Because we're so low in valuation, right? Like look at how the project. We're only in the 40th and 50th percentile. This is ounces down below, and this is your dollar. And we switch to dollars as we project out. It's the 30th and 40th percentile. Even if we get back to the trend line, which is like pretty basic for Bitcoin, right? If we go back to the trend line in terms of gold, that's $270,000 Bitcoin. And remember, the trend line on the dollar chart is only 125. So there's like an interesting little possible premium there. If gold bugs get their wits about them and understand that, 30 ounces for one Bitcoin is actually a pretty good deal. You might want to act on it now because this trend is going up and up and up. It's still 95% R squared, even if we're way undervalued at the moment. Now I'm looking here down to the number 5 below. Yeah, there are a few good ones. Let me check. Let's see if I can find a relatively recent one. It's a pretty good one from River. This doesn't break out a type yet, but just let's just look at addresses. Obviously, whales. Anybody with 1,000 or more, I mean, it's clearly going to be a whale. Satoshi's some of this, miners are some of this, exchanges are some of this. Most of these are just individual whales. All right, so that's 4 million coins. And remember, there's been plenty of research that suggests 4 million coins are lost, frozen, or burned. Call it 2. Including Satoshis. So 2 million Bitcoins still in the hands of not many people. Even if you include one address per person or one person per address, it's not that many people. You're looking at the top 0.1% of the world. And then you go here. I don't know, maybe you can count the shrimps or something. Call them, or dolphin. What does it go? Dolphin, whales, dolphins, shrimps. Of course, it doesn't mean that, again, it's not one address per person, but $10 to $100 is that's something big to flesh out, and we'll get. Sorry. Let's see if we can find more on actual exchanges or by the way, does anybody have a good chart on this or a good place to look? Pomp is a great promoter, great self-promoter. Certainly gets it done. Bitcoin. Yeah, I remember Glassnode did this with the shrimps. This is a pretty good one. It's still stale, but it's probably... So this is 2023. This is 2023. 97% of us are shrimps. $50,000 miners. That is addresses. This is counting up addresses. And then exchanges, not that many, only 20. Again, this is just entities, okay? And then they got humpback, whale, shark, dolphin, fish, octopus, crab, shrimp. And then if you look at the actual balances, it's a little bit different. So this is pretty... There's a lot to say that this is quite good. A humpback moved coins in July, on July 4th. So, you know, he was moving... Wasn't even the original address like 20,000 per one address. So that was a really rare event. So a humpback moving coins is extremely rare. Satoshi is a humpback. 2010 guys, 2009 guys are humpbacks. The question is if they're lost or not. You know, hard to tell. But it would be good to sort this into, you know, someone needs to do the analysis, not me, so we can just review it together. But, you know, then you try to sort out like, okay, strategy versus others versus others. It doesn't necessarily mean that whales are, you know, individuals here, but that a lot of them are, frankly. So even though IBIT's got a huge amount of Bitcoin, which, by the way, do they have the, where's the ETFs? Here's a good, I mean, they have it even here. So he's got 4 million. This isn't based by age, but by entity here. So ETFs holding 1.5 million, public companies 1 million, MicroStrategy 600,000 of that, which is insane. Government's 515, although that's even could be iffy with the U.S. government. Private companies 230, DeFi 370 was just huge. And exchange is actually not that much. But think about that. Like, think about how little exchanges might hold in total, 155,000. But then go back to this chart. They dominate the flow. You know, people send money into exchanges and out all the time. I can get some of this per API, so I'll start to show this more as well. This is exchange volume. It's not ETF volume. ETF volume is much smaller. Yeah, it is insane. It's going to be very interesting to see how, you know, how this works out with U.S. law, especially since Trump strong-armed Intel to selling them 10%. I mean, this is a nationally... There's no question that this amount of Bitcoin is like, it could be viewed as a national security, depending on what happens. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but every sort of law, I mean, about private property could be tested here, depending on how big Bitcoin gets, and we know it's going to get big. Of course, this is private property. It's the value of the shareholders. Maybe it becomes a national security issue. Yep, this is a good point too. It's very true. Very true. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've seen that a lot, or even possibly uh, selling them into a Bitcoin treasury company. Like those deals have been done. I mean, Blockstream has basically done that right here, as I understand it. This 30,000, which is now part of Cantor Fitzgerald. That's SEPO there. They're calling it right now. They're saying Bitcoin Standard Treasury Company, but this is a Cantor fund. Here's a Cantor fund, and here's a Cantor fund. XXI and Bitcoin Standard. This is as I understand it, a lot of Blockstream coins. Yeah. So it's happening. It's definitely happening. Wall Street, Wall Street is happening. Financialization, I mean, of Bitcoin is happening. Well, this is a good question, and tell me, guys. Like, I haven't done this, but if can you find good yield? I mean, not yield, but interest rates on Bitcoin collateral? Because it still seems to me like most interest that you're going to pay on Bitcoin, your Bitcoin that you own, is like 10%. Which, okay, depending on your own personal cash flow, maybe you can pay that no problem each year. But it seems very high. And you have to also think about the quality of that custodian. Are they going to lose the Bitcoin? What's their protocol? Yeah, this would be good to get some charts on there. Yep. There's some more AI, which is always correct, right? Leaden, 12.7%. Morpho platform with Coinbase. 2.9 with Nexo. That sounds absurdly low. UHodler, Strike. I know there's more. But Salt lending rates from 8.9 to 14.45. It's a lot of money. It's a high interest rate. What's your country, Siradon? What are we looking at? Turkey? Are you talking about, yeah, the value of your collateral increasing? Yeah. No, I mean, I understand it. You want to be careful of the bear, though. Yep. Bitcoin Swiss is a long time player. Well, this channel's not for talking about those types of those types of lending deals anyway, or borrowing deals. Yeah, that's good advice. You gotta have a plan. Anytime you do anything, you really should have a plan. If you're just don't want to think about it, you want to buy and hodl, do it. But if you really want to take the risk of paying some interest and potentially losing that coin at a much lower price at the end of the day than if you had just sold it, right? Then you need to think about that. Because I think that would be pretty disastrous if you worked hard to get 2 Bitcoins and then you draw 100K or 120K at 50% LTV, and then you get caught not paying attention to the covenants or something on the way down. All of a sudden, you're margined out of 2 Bitcoin, and yeah, you have your 100,000, but you lost literally half your Bitcoin in both collateral, margin calls, and fees and interest. So even though I like studying finance and looking at it, I'm very, very skeptical of a lot of these products. Yeah. No, I know it. I have Turkey here. I can pull it up on my spreadsheet. I need to publish these more, but the Turkish lira inflation rate is just incredible. I agree with you. Finesse. Let me show you. So here's give you an inside peek at my spreadsheet. So this is what I use to prepare the monetary base stuff every quarter. Top 50 currencies. I'll be expanding that hopefully, maybe not this quarter, but to like 80 currencies soon. Turkey is incredible for as big as the economy is. Look at this. This is latest month. This is increase in Turkish lira monetary base, 56%, 30% year on year, and an average since 1980 of 47.7%. That does not count devaluation periods. That's just the average growth rate, the compound growth rate. It's incredible that you guys deal with that. It's like even Iraq didn't have this from 2004. It's one of the highest. Brazil and Argentina take the cake. Brazil averages 92% over like 6 currencies. Argentina, I think, is the leader at 102% on average since 1970. Compound annual growth. These are, by the way, Bitcoin prices to reach the monetary base. Wait, no, sorry, Bitcoin market caps at this one. So we're well over 100 million. Now we're in big boy territory. More than double the pound sterling. All right, it's the same thing as here. Price, what? There we go. There's the price. At 220, 230, we'll meet Japan's monetary base. That's incredible. This is a good thing to track. I like stats like that. I got to get the data. It's a very politically charged place at the moment, isn't it? As many places are right now. So here you go. What the hell is this? This is an extremely slow site to load. On Aave, apparently you can get, I haven't looked into Aave, but again, how safe is your Bitcoin wrapped up or whatever it does to take a loan on Aave? Nexo, it's pretty low. These haven't been updated in quite some time, though. So this is not a great site. Well, you got to start somewhere. So that's great to hear. Well, thanks for joining. Thanks for being here for this. Just like it's for my own sanity as well, like doing these, talking to you guys. Try to give pretty even keel analysis at least. Another reason I think is super bullish, and this one actually does, again, bode to more stable growth for a while, is this. This is transaction origination fees. Let's look at the trailing 12-month indicator. All right. Very slow to pop, and it pops well after the actual, right? So this is not a topping indicator, but this shows you, okay, we're like really coming down. Because as the price goes down, the value of transactions in dollars goes down. So it takes a long time. But you see the nice stable rise here. And if we have a boom, like look here, this was like flat in 2020. And then that boom caused this thing to go parabolic. And right there, we already topped. And just we're just not doing that now. You don't have such a stable. Well, I guess you could, but I don't think you have such a stable boom for 2.5 years or 2 years, and then you just pop. Especially when daily transactions are completely muted or pretty low. This is the number. This is the number that will show us is 30-day transaction values. So yeah, it's kind of still kind of wonky, but something to show warning. Even daily actually is. Fees are a better signal than actual transaction values, but this is what it is, in case you're curious. 35 billion a day, 8 trillion a year. We've topped at nearly 20 trillion already back in September 2022. I certainly would agree there. Yeah. What did you think of Trump's comments about when he met with Erdogan and he said this guy knows something about rigging elections? The entertainment factor from Trump is certainly high over times. I agree. I can't thank Satoshi enough. It's an incredible, incredible invention. So these companies that now have Bitcoin on their balance sheet, right? Mostly they're doing 50 million before they even heard about Bitcoin. Exchanges started to do 50 million. That's a pretty wild fact, actually. Look at that. No, here. So of course this is just random. Like there's not that many like huge companies here, but they're, you know, this is all the companies on Bitcoin treasuries, except for Strategy and Tesla, which changes every the thing completely. But just sort of regular companies that are now, at the time, didn't have any Bitcoin, but this just shows their value shares traded. So 50 million, maybe 100 million in volume. And Bitcoin gets to that already in 2016, 2017, and just does not look back. Just dwarfs it all now. Couple billion a day, 10 billion, 20 billion, 100 billion, 300 billion. Have some more work otherwise today, guys. So let me know if you want to look at anything else before I sign off. But, you know, keep calm, carry on. The next YouTube thumbnail that you see that says Bitcoin is either going to zero or Bitcoin's going to $1 billion is very close to 100% wrong. Also, be careful about the next newsletter you see telling you that they're going to give you the next hot tip on crypto or Bitcoin. We're in pretty good territory, right on fair value, but actually a little bit rare because we're above the black line, which only happens 30% of the time. I did not have time, but I will. Assuming that I can travel to America next week, I will for sure read it then. But I'm wrapped up in a bunch of stuff. Honestly, I'm just not reading too much outside of work right now and making charts for you guys. So I'll get there. I'll get there. I'll continue to poo-poo on newsletters a little bit. If you guys like this, please, you can support me here very easily. Value for value. No subscription. On-chain or with Lightning. I'd appreciate it. My pleasure, sir. Thank you very much. Good night. I assume you're down under. Have a good night, and welcome anytime. With that, I'm going to sign off as well, guys. So keep letting me know if you like these charts, want to see anything different. In the next 2 weeks, I'll start to get a lot more on-chain and derivative data, which will help us a little bit more even. All right. With that, I think I'm going to sign off, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, as always. Have a great Thursday. Thank you, Daniel. Always chime in at the end with a thank you. I appreciate that.